All right, and we are live with people coming in. Awesome, here we are. What's up, everyone? Michael here with Company Cam, joined by a good friend in the industry, not just an expert in the industry, but a good friend, Benji Carlson, with Breakthrough Academy. Benji, thanks so much for jumping in with us today.
It's good to see you, Gogan. I always enjoy these hangouts, man. So this will be fun.
Absolutely. I love the topic that we're going to get on today. So as people are kind of coming in here, obviously they know what they're in store for, but we're going to talk project management roadmap for contractors. And specifically, we're going to kind of have some dialogue back and forth on how we can help these contractors scale past 8 figures. So I think it's going to be a great conversation back and forth. While we're letting people get in here, let's go over just a few housekeeping things. In Zoom, you guys are probably all familiar with that now, but you can see in the bottom of your Zoom, there is chat. So if you want to practice the chat piece and let us know where you're joining us from or what trade you're in, just give that a practice. And then there's also a Q&A down there as well. So if you have a specific question throughout the presentation for Benji, we will make sure that we get that answered. I'm going to see all of those questions if they're in the Q&A, and I'll just kind of see how the conversation is going and either interrupt Benji and say, hey, Benji, we got a great question, or we'll kind of save that to the end, but we'll make sure you get all your questions that you guys have answered. So with that, we got a nice number of people here already with us. Benji, let's go ahead and kick this thing off. Maybe just give everybody like that quick high level of who Benji is, what Breakthrough is.
Sure.
Speak to your expertise, and then we'll get into the how to scale your business on the project management thing.
So, hey everyone. Hey Nick. Hi all 57 of you. Nice to see you. Welcome. My name's Benji, and I guess let me just tell you very briefly about Breakthrough Academy, because I think that the rest of this conversation will make a bit more sense if you understand where it sort of comes from in the first place. So we're obviously partners with Company Cam. We are not a photo storage app. We are not a piece of software. We are the best way to describe it would be business systemizers. So we help contractors implement a management system into their company that helps them scale. And there's a lot that goes into that, from financial tracking and annual budgeting to how people design their organizational structure to their recruiting and hiring systems. Obviously, finding people is harder than it's ever been. So we do a lot of work on employer brand and a business's ability to attract the people that it needs. We implement training and onboarding systems. It's all of the behind the scenes sort of operational stuff that when you first start your business, you're not really that worried about. But then when you kind of hit the $1 million a year mark, maybe even a little higher, that's when you really start to feel like, okay, this business needs infrastructure, or it's not going to get to where it deserves to go. And so we come in behind the scenes, we work with entrepreneurs, we help them implement, and we watch their businesses grow as a result. So that's what Breakthrough Academy does. I wear a few different hats on sort of like the sales and marketing and content side of our business. I host a podcast called Contractor Evolution. We do a bunch of other stuff as well. This project management conversation, Gogan, has the reason we've kind of built these resources and created this conversation is just out of a need. Like, we've just been pay pretty close attention to what our members are saying, and this project management thing seems to need some demystifying for a lot of business owners. It seems to be a very weak element. I'm not going to say for everyone, but for a lot of contractors, I think it's quite a weak part of their business. And it's once it gets fixed, once it gets cleaned up, there's a lot of things downstream of that become much easier. Revenues, it's easier to scale. Your business becomes more profitable. Your people are less stressed out. Your customers are better communicated with. And so I think that this is a key that a lot of people want to unlock in their business?
Yeah, let's start there. If it's, obviously you guys created content and conversation around the topic for a reason. But when we're specifically talking about constructions and these, home service trade contractors, you kind of have two elements. You've got the process piece of project management and you have the human element of project management. Let's start with the process piece of it. Why is it such a difficult piece to master in your business, that project management piece of your business? Why is that so hard for contractors to master?
Okay. So here's the deal. In construction and trades, like in our little world here, the actual term project management or project manager, right, has become very watered down. And if you talked to any project manager in a business, most of them, if they're being real with you, are going to tell you that behind the fancy title and the company truck, they're essentially just a professional firefighter, right? They're doing their absolute best with the resources that they have. They're trying their hardest, but more often than not, they're essentially running from one fire to the next. So they're PMs, they're project managers in title. It says that on their business card, but they're not project managers in practice. Now, here's what's interesting. Here's why that is, right? The principles of project management are totally universal. You can use these to organize your kids' carpool to a soccer tournament, or you can use them to organize a, I don't know, $2.5 billion airport expansion. So it's a system, it's a practice, it's a craft that you can master. It's not just something that you throw on a business card because it looks good to clients. So while these principles have been absorbed by other big industries, aerospace, big tech, oil and gas, manufacturing, etc., they've not really made their way into construction and trades for whatever reason. And so there's a big gap, like these best practices, these guiding principles, the SOPs, the process for how to do this. Like, keep in mind, everyone, like you can literally get a master's degree in project management, right? This is something that it's quite academic. You can absolutely get educated and get better at this. But I think that I think that construction and trades is very underserved when it comes to high quality education and tools and resources around this. So I think that is probably a really good place to start when you want to think about why this is the way that it is. It's like other sectors of the economy are leaning into project management heavily, whereas we're like with a lot of things, construction and trades is just a little bit behind, but catching up very quickly. And I think if that resonates with you, if you're like, oh, I know what he means, let us know in the chat box if it does. The rest of what we're going to talk about today is we're going to give you a few pieces to the puzzle. Not everything. It's a 1 hour conversation, but let's give you some low hanging fruit on how to move the needle in the right direction.
Yeah. So with that answer, you talked about the title on a business card, the company truck. How do I get that person that truly is cut out to be an excellent project manager? Is it potential that I already have them and I'm just not giving them the right processes and tools? Or what do I need to be looking for so that I go and find that truly exceptional project manager? Or why is it so hard to find that exceptional project manager?
So I think we'll kind of go deeper on like the profile or the makeup or the traits of a good PM later, but to give you like a few thoughts on why that's so challenging. The first thing is that, like, it kind of goes back to the point I just made. Like, the term has become watered down. So while people say I'm a project manager, and look here, it says it right on my resume, and I did this for this other business. It's like you didn't. You just were given that title. So there's a huge like there's a reasonable amount of confusion about what we actually mean by that. And so people, as you talk to any builder, and they'll tell you oh yeah, this guy says he has 4 years of project management experience with this other business. I got him on site, doesn't have a clue, right? Like can't manage a budget, can't manage a schedule, doesn't really understand building envelope very well, doesn't communicate with the customer particularly well, is not very good with, Builder Trend or Job Nimbus or whatever platform we use. And so I think that just like the fact that this has become so watered down is part of why these people are so difficult to find. And that's why, we are a bigger fan of kind of building this in-house, like nurture these people, train these people, turn someone that is maybe a little newer, a little less experienced into a good project manager by having great infrastructure for them to work off of in the first place.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I will get into this as we go in the conversation, but I think it's kind of a twofold thing at times as well, where you have to be willing to give some of that responsibility to your project managers. It's kind of, it's not just hey, we're slapping the title on there and it's a watered down thing. But a part of that is because, owners hold close to the vest the budgeting and the scheduling and some of those things, where it's like, hey, you are a project manager by title, but I've never actually given you those keys to sharpen those skills. And that kind of takes me into my next question, or where I want to get to for the owners, because I assume we have a lot of owners in this audience with us today. When they go look in the mirror, Benji, and they say, okay, what should I be looking for that maybe my systems and processes when it comes to project management aren't up to snuff? What should they be looking for? Are there any telltale signs where it's like, yeah, that's me, I can diagnose it myself?
Like what are the red flags? Like what how do you know if your project management needs
exactly
work?
Okay, because like you do have to look in the mirror and you have to analyze your business, and then it's like, okay, what are the telltale, what should I be looking for here?
Okay, so there's a couple things I can rattle off. Some are obvious, some are less obvious. I'll give you an obvious one first. So if a business's net profit is really low, like let's say it's between 2%, 4%, 5% net profit, that's like annual net profit. That usually, it could be other things, but one of the first things that we check when we see that is the project management system. And there's a pretty simple reason for that. You may have heard this saying, money loves speed, right? The best way to think of this is like your business has fixed expenses that absolutely need to be paid, whether you build a lot that month or you build a little. So your office, whether you rent it or you own it, you're paying a mortgage, your vehicle leases, the salaries of your management staff, your software subscriptions, the list goes on. There's a huge, chart of accounts that are just sort of devoted to overhead, to fixed expenses. Now, poor project management leads to missed deadlines. It leads to things slowing down, getting bogged down. And what that means is that you produce less revenue and therefore gross profit, and you need that gross profit to cover those fixed expenses and then some, so that it can create a healthy net. So this is I really love, we say this a lot in Breakthrough Academy, like your goal is to cram as much revenue through your overhead as possible. Like that is the difference between super profitable businesses. I'm talking 18% net, 22% net, 25% net in some really world-class cases. The difference between those businesses and everyone else is not they just charge an arm and a leg. It's not they just have fancy customers and rich customers. I mean, they do have those things also, but if you really want to be analytical, and examine what they're doing, it's they cram more revenue through that overhead compared to everyone else. And good project management systems allow for that. So I'll give you can give you a super simple example, Gogan. Okay. Company A, company B. Company A, okay, do $10 million a year in revenue. they have a 25% gross profit margin. Just to probably someone is like, what's gross profit? What's net? Too afraid to ask. Let me just explain. Gross profit is like what you make off of the project, off of the job. So you sell, super simple numbers, you sell a job for $10,000, costs you $6,000 to build that job between your labor and your materials. You have a $4,000 gross profit off of that project. That gross profit then pays for your overhead, and then whatever's left over is your net. Quick tutorial on gross versus net. Anyway, back to my example. 10 million in revenue, 25% gross profit margin, and 1.3 million in overhead that they need to spend every year to do that. Company B, because they have slightly better project management systems, they do 12 million. They're able to do $2 million a year more because they get things done quickly. They do 12 million, same gross profit, 25%, same overhead, 1.3 million. If you do the math, right, you'll see company A makes 1.2 million net, whereas company B makes 1.7. So if you look at that as a percentage, it's company A is getting 12% net, company B is doing 14. The point is good project management systems are the biggest factor that allows you to cram that revenue through your overhead and have all that trickle down to your bottom line. So net profit is a hugely important thing that we look at. And I would say that that's especially a red flag for like what we call larger average job size contractors. So if you're building custom homes, if you're doing large scale remodels, like where your projects are in the like hundreds of thousands of dollars, when we see low net with those businesses, it's like almost a guarantee that it's a project management. Whereas if you're a smaller average job size contractor, let's say you're doing like roofing or landscaping or painting, your jobs are in the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. It's not always as clear a case, but with large AGS, it's usually a pretty surefire sign. Now, another thing, okay, if your gross profit doesn't hit your goal very consistently, in other words, when you estimate a job and you're like, we're gonna make $3,000 on this project, and then but it's not very reliable. Like sometimes you make 1,500, sometimes you lose money, sometimes maybe you exceed, but it's very like randomized. Like you don't have the ability to sort of like estimate accurately and then produce in alignment with that estimate. That's another surefire sign that your PM systems are broken. Third one would just be like schedules. So if you're consistently off schedule, if you often take longer than you think you're going to take to complete something, usually goes back to project management. And here's sort of like the quintessential one of the most obvious ones would be like they have no written details. So like, let us know in the chat box, like how many of you guys have like a well-written SOP for your project manager? How many of you have like a clear employment agreement, clear quality control checklist, a clear communication plan? Like there is written documentation and systemization around this specific role and the things that they need to do. For most people, for most businesses that we work with, there would be zero, or there'd be sort of bare minimum stuff that the business has built for that project manager. So that, I think that fourth one, like no written details, is probably the most obvious, because it's really difficult for them to lead effectively without a handle on labor, materials, budgets, stuff like that at all times. So yeah, I mean, just to summarize, low net profit, low gross profit, you're not very good at scheduling, you often go overtime, or if you have nothing written down, nothing written in place, those to me would be like, those would be alarm bells. Like, okay, that sounds like me. I probably need to work on my project management infrastructure.
Yeah, I love those. And I would even take your fourth one a step further, because I love when I'm presenting, and I present a lot on, documentation of job sites, and oftentimes I can get like half of the room to raise their hand and say that they have a standard operating procedure, or they have a process for it. And then I always challenge those owners, hey, if I brought one of your crew members in here, would you be willing to bet $100 that they would be able to say that exact same process to me that you just said? Right. And so taking it a step further, like, yeah, we got to get these things written down. And then have to make sure that you're training those project managers and that it's, in their blood, that it's like, hey, this is exactly how we run our jobs.
Yeah. I'd add something else to that too. One thing that, like, what we would consider like a world-class project manager, if we wanted to put some criteria around this, a project manager owns the budget, they own the schedule, and they own the client communication. So if you, the owner, own that stuff, like if you're making decisions based on the budget, if you're making decisions based on the schedule, if you're the one having most of the important conversations with the client, right? Your project manager, sadly, don't tell them this because it might hurt their feelings. They are essentially an errand boy. They're not they might help, they might go get some stuff, they might organize some things on site, they pick up some materials, whatever. They're not a project manager. That would be like our sort of like if they're not owning those three things, they are basically an overpaid errand boy. So that'd be another just thing to look at. Yeah.
How often, not to take us on a tangent here, but the first 2 points were very financial driven. The third point even like plays a big role in the finances. If I'm running long on jobs, that's costing me somehow financially. How often do you see people even just struggling to know their numbers? Because I would venture to guess that maybe not everybody on this, but there's people out there that when you're like, yeah, you got low gross profit, there's people like, I actually don't even know my gross profit. It just is that something that you see as a problem where people are struggling with even just understanding their numbers of their business?
Yeah, I would say it's a pretty widespread thing within construction and trades. Small business ownership, like broadly speaking, it's not even just this. Like I think that talking about money, looking at these numbers can be intimidating for people. And I think that there's a huge gap when it comes to people just having dashboards and having up-to-date, accurate data on what is going on in their business. I couldn't give you a percentage because I've not done the research. I can give you sort of my own anecdotal instinct on it. I'd say probably half, maybe even a little bit more. Yeah, half or more people are just like they're we say running it like by the gut, right? They're just like, I think it's about this, and then they find out at the end of the year, how they did, good or bad. Sadly, more often than not, it's bad if you're not on top of this stuff, because what gets measured gets managed, as we say. But yeah, that's definitely a huge challenge. So to maybe add another point to that, like none of this, like we're talking about project management, I would not dive deep into this rabbit hole until you get the financial management handled first.
Honestly,
like there's a good order, like there's an order to these things. Like finances, number one, like get that in place first. Probably say do organizational structure second, maybe a couple other things. This would be more an intermediate skill or an intermediate system. If you don't have the basics down, this is not a good use of your time yet.
Absolutely. And not to give you guys a shameless plug, but I asked that question because I've heard yourself, I've heard Danny speak a ton of times, and you guys have loads of resources and knowledge there at Breakthrough. So, if you're sitting here and you're saying like, well, Benji told me that I need to know my profit margin, gross profit margin, some of these things. If you're saying, I don't know those numbers yet, get with Benji, get with the team at Breakthrough after this, because you guys can definitely help with those things as well. We don't have time in this hour to solve those things, so we'll get back on track. But that was just hearing that, I was like, if somebody's sitting there saying, I don't know my gross profit numbers, we got to have those steps in order to get to where we're doing good here.
Yeah, that's literally the first system we implement with our members is a really, really elaborate dashboard that shows them everything. I just mentioned this. A bunch of people in the chat box are like, oh, haven't made these documents yet. I'm currently in the process. I'm kind of working on it. Just to let you know, guys, stay tuned. Like at the end of this talk in 35 minutes, I'm going to send you to a landing page where you can download these systems. I think Michael and I are going to talk about in a second. You want a communication plan, you want an employment agreement, you want a GSR dashboard, you want all these like sort of bare bones, low hanging fruit PM systems. We're going to give those away for free as a way of saying thanks for being here. So if you're in the process of building this stuff, I got a whole bunch of stuff that's going to save you a ton of hours in building this.
Yeah, we got a question in here. I think it fits kind of what we were
Sure.
talking about in the telltale signs of, or the red flag sign of things, but maybe even the flip side of that, where like, hey, what are the, world-class businesses doing when it comes to project management? But question is it smart or a mistake to have one person carrying out the cost estimation, handle the PO system, scheduling, handle contractors or subcontractors, and purchasing?
It's not smart, or like, that's, I don't know, like, it's sort of a interesting way to ask that question. I would just say, like, ideally, Mirza, you would not have so much bundled into one role. Like a lot of the times when we have this conversation, people say, should I have my should I have my PM also doing estimation and sales? When you look at scalability, you want to create increasingly more defined lanes for people. And so the sort of the textbook, management consultant answer to this would be like, those should be defined roles. Those should actually be different people in time. The real on the boots answer, and I can say this because I've run a business like yours, is you can't always afford that. Those people aren't always available. And so there are chapters in your business's story where you're probably going to have someone wearing 2 hats or wearing 3 hats. You'd like to, over time, Mirza, move in the direction where you have, different individuals owning those responsibilities for you. That would make scalability more easy. But I understand when your business is younger, you're more junior as an entrepreneur, that's not always possible. And so I would say, do your best with what you have, but over time, move in the direction where you can define those 2 roles for different people, or those 3 roles for 3 different people. It's a great question. Yeah.
Great answer as well, Benji. I think the one thing I would add to that is just making sure you understand the plan too. Like, hey, as we start to scale, what hats can John maybe take off and we're going to give to this new role of lead estimator or whatever that is. So I think that's great as well. Mark even brought that up. Like, it depends on scale. Where are you guys at in the process?
Yeah, I see that. That's
many
just
hats.
It.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
Mark's right. Yeah.
Let's then continue to even focus a little bit on these companies that you've worked with that do a really awesome job with project management.
Yeah.
And at the same time, kind of think about so assuming that this is a problem that is solvable, what are some things that we can do in our business to fix it, to get to where, those world-class businesses are at? Because those world-class businesses probably have solved those things themselves at some point in time. They didn't just magically start being perfect at project management. So what can we do to solve these problems, and they maybe even give some examples of what the world-class businesses that you work with are doing?
Sure. That's kind of a 2-part question. So let's just talk about what world-class looks like and feels like. The first thing that I can say with some authority, because we do have many examples of this within the Breakthrough Academy world, is these businesses make a lot of money. I'll be explicit, they make a lot of money. Okay. Their net profit is very, very high. They're enjoying a highly profitable company, whether they build custom homes, whether they remodel kitchens and bathrooms, whether they create expansive landscapes, whatever it is, they usually are the most profitable in the bunch. And then there's some other sort of secondary benefits. Their teams are not super stressed out. You don't have your project managers who are red in the face and their cortisol levels are spiked, every hour of every day. People aren't exhausted. Things feel more controlled. They feel more calm and peaceful. Generally speaking, your clients are a lot happier. So you'll see the quality of the client and contractor relationship increase, get better through the life cycle of the project. People are like, what? That's insane. Usually when I finish projects, we're sick of each other. When you have really good PM systems, you're usually closer with your client by the end. It's not to say the project was 100% perfect and nothing went off without a hitch. You may still have had hiccups along the way, but because there's a really good process for this, you would enjoy those things. So making more money, team's less stressed out, clients are happier. There'd probably 5 or 6 other things we could dive into if we had time. So that's kind of like what's at stake here. As far as like this, the low hanging fruit, or like what to do to move the needle in this direction is kind of 4 things that we would consider like very entry level project management systems. This is not, if someone has a PhD in this and they're watching this webinar, they might go, oh, that's not everything. You can do lots more. And they'd be right. But if I'm talking to people who are just starting to dive down this rabbit hole in their business, what we think would be really important for people at that stage would be, number 1, really well done employment agreement. So like project manager employment agreements, a GSR dashboard, number 2. Number 3 would be like clear communication plans. And then number 4 would be project status updates. That would be like the most readily available systems to implement. And we can dive into those if you want, Gogan.
Yeah, I would love to. Let's start at the top there. Like, what needs to go into that employment agreement?
Okay. Can I screen share?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see what we got here. Great. So a good employment agreement, a lot of people, like, this is probably not the most, this is pretty simple stuff. Like, I'm not going to pretend that this is like coming out of the lab at Tesla. This is a nice, clean Word document, nothing fancy, but it works extremely well. When a business does not have employment agreements, and not just for project managers, but for all the roles in a business, for laborers, for office managers, for estimators, even the owner should have one. You'll see a lot of finger pointing. So people will be like, I thought that was your job. And then in other areas, you'll see like the duplication of tasks. There's a lot of redundancy because 2 people are doing the same thing and they don't know. So this is like one of the simplest things you can do to inject your business with clarity and with structure. So a good employment agreement, this will be available in the downloads, by the way, should have a few things. Company values at the top. Always start with that. Like always lead with your values. So you guys, if there's some of you that have great company values that you're proud of, throw those in the chat box. Then you'd get into like deliverables and accountability. So what are the actual results that this project manager needs to achieve? So if let's say I was a builder, I'd go in here and I'd say, okay, I want my PM to produce $2.5 million in revenue a year, and I'd like them to achieve like a 35% gross profit margin. I want them to maintain a 9 out of 10 on the quality score. You could change these as much as you want. You can make these to be whatever deliverables you think are important for your business, but we always anchor our employment agreements with some results focus. So it's not just a brain dump, a laundry list of a bunch of tasks. You start with, this is how we measure success. This is what we think good looks like for your role as a project manager. And these deliverables would look different for different types of positions. But that's where we would start. Then we would get into accountabilities, which would now it is the task list. Now we do go through the laundry list of things they need to do, but these accountabilities are pinned on each individual deliverable. So for the on budget and on schedule deliverable, this is all the stuff they need to do. For the other one, here's all the stuff they need to do. You get into reporting structure. So who do they report to, on what, how often, how do they get paid, how do they get bonused? Probably going to have a bunch of questions about compensation in a bit. And then you'd have sort of like general expectations like hours worked and benefits and travel, etc. So this would be like, if I'm thinking like square one for this, having a good employment agreement in place, defining their role in writing, not just some like verbal understanding where you have this, loose idea of what people do and it's kind of communicated orally. It's in writing, it's on paper, it's read through, and it's signed off on at the bottom at the beginning of the year, rather, right? You literally sign off here saying, I get it, I know what I'm here to do. People talk a lot about accountability. How do I hold my people accountable? It's very difficult to hold your people accountable to a line you never drew in the first place. And so employment agreements really solve that for you very easily. So that'd be the first thing. Make sense?
Loved it.
Yeah. Any questions? No, it looks like we're good.
We're good.
So,
Eric does have a question, but let's get through the 4
okay,
here.
sure.
We'll get that answered as well.
Sure. So those are employment agreements. After that, the next like really fundamental system, this is a little cooler. Employment agreements are important, but they sometimes can be a little dry. I get it. This I think is actually really cool. So back to the accountability piece, right? It's like, okay, make an employment agreement. It's nice and detailed. There's some numbers at the top. There's like a laundry list of tasks. Cool. Good for you. Do you think that if somebody just reads off this thing and signs on the dotted line that all of a sudden your problems are solved? No, like you would be delusional. You'd be kidding yourself. So that's where the actual like week to week management comes in. And so this is something we called a GSR dashboard. GSR stands for goal setting and review. So goal setting and review meeting is, I'm just gonna, let me just pull off screen share. I want to set some context around this. This is something that you, the owner, would do with your key roles on a weekly basis. You could get away with bi-weekly, but monthly would not be often enough. It is a one-on-one meeting that ideally you do every week with, let's say, your project manager, your office manager, and your sales manager. Just to use a super sort of like basic business example. And in these meetings, it is prepared for by that key role. So the PM would come into their dashboard on a Friday afternoon and they would fill it out. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. You would then do your prep as the owner. And then you would, on the following Monday, you guys would get together and have a very results-focused, performance-focused discussion about where this individual is at against their goals, which are where they are clearly articulated in the employment agreement. So this is how we connect sort of like week-to-week activity to that annualized set of deliverables. Okay, so here's the example, right? Deliverables up here, 2.5 million in production. We got our company values up here: family first, be honest, be respectful, be accountable, schedule and budget, customer service, all that stuff from the employment agreement. Now what the PM goes through is they actually have a little dashboard to provide some insight in writing about how the projects they're managing are going. So in this example, let's say this guy's name is Tim. Tim is managing 3 projects. He's managing the Thompson house, which is a $765,000 contract. He's running the Lang project, about $500,000, just under $500K. And then he's got a smaller remodel for the Whitakers at $80,000. And within these projects, he has a clear target gross profit he'd like to hit, right? And then there's a few other data points. It's like, what percentage are you complete on this project? Well, on this one, we're about 26%. Are you on schedule? Are you on budget? And where are you at against your milestones? And so this is basically a live document. You can see I have this in Excel. I would recommend actually uploading this to your Google Drive and having it be like a cloud-based Sheets document so that you guys can collaborate and work on stuff together. But this would get updated every week so that the PM and the owner can have a very concise and data-focused touch point about where that PM is at against his goals. And then you, the owner, can support that person in the way that they need. So there's a couple things that this does. Number one, I actually think that a lot of business owners are way less plugged in to what's happening in their business than they think they are. Like they're kind of overconfident about how much they know about the 10 projects or the 12 sites they have open. So it solves that. So you're super plugged in. It allows you to support and coach your team a lot better. It makes your people feel very supported, and it really drives accountability for the simple reason that your project manager knows, yeah, this guy's on my shit. Like this guy's on top of it. Like I have to report in on this data every single week. I better get my ass in gear. It's not like a threatening way. It's like a very healthy sort of like high performance culture type way. And so GSR meetings are how we connect long-term goals, annualized goals to like week-to-week activity. That's how you lead people throughout the year. So that would be the second system that I think is really important. You want me to just keep moving along?
Yeah, I think it's perfect.
Okay.
I love
These second two are a little quicker to get, a little quicker to get through. So the third thing that I mentioned, guys, is something we call a project communication plan. You talk to most owners about this, they'll be like, nah, like we communicate, like we're good. Like I'm not afraid to have a tough conversation. Like it's like we talk all the time. It's like, okay, just because you have 60 million phone calls on your, your phone record every day, it actually doesn't mean you're communicating well at all. It just means you have a lot of phone calls. And so a project communication plan essentially articulates the meeting rhythm that you need to have with the key stakeholders of the project. So who are those? It's homeowners, it's the project manager, subtrades. It could be an architect, it could be the city, it could be an interior designer. There's going to be a whole host of people who are involved in some capacity with this project. And a project communication plan essentially lays out when you're going to talk to these people, about what you're going to speak with them on. It's not just like randomized conversations, like it is an actual like, hey, with the with the homeowner, we need to talk about these things, this often. The architect is something else. And so this is a super easy to like fill in the blanks template that just allows you to like premeditate when these meetings happen. Gives you a purpose, an outcome, and an agenda for each meeting, and it dramatically increases the quality of your communication while decreasing the volume, which I think a lot of business owners would probably like to see. I'd like to talk on the phone a little less. Everyone would, and this is a great way to do it. The fourth thing is something we call a project status update. Again, pretty simple. This is much more just for the homeowners. So effective PMs would mandate that these take place with the client. It's not optional. Client has to take part in project status updates every 1 to 2 weeks. If you have maybe a more neurotic, like high attention to detail customer, you do them weekly. If you have someone that's a little more hands-off, do them bi-weekly. But your discussion points in a project status update are to talk about the budget, to talk about the schedule, and to talk about key decisions with the client. So if you one of like the number one reasons people's relationships deteriorate, client contractor relationships deteriorate, change orders are not communicated effectively. So at the end of the project, you kind of go and say, hey, oh, just by the way, we need an extra 30 grand. It's like, that sucks for the homeowner. You're going to have a hard time collecting on that too. So if you have changes to the budget, if change orders have happened, homeowners decided to go with a fancier set of cabinets, for example, and that doesn't get captured and then relayed to the customer proactively, you are going to have a whole bunch of issues downstream. Schedule, same thing. It's like people, if you're going to be a month behind, you should know that well in advance, and that should be communicated to the client. And then key decisions, right? So if you have selection, if you're at a stage in the project where selections need to be made, you need to let the homeowner know about that. Customers are indecisive, right? Oh, let's think about it for frickin' 3 weeks and like really hum and haw over basic stuff. If you've, I'm sure a lot of you on this call would have been frustrated by that before. If you can sort of plant seeds early on and say, hey, we do need to know about this 2 weeks out. Can you guys, start looking at X, Y, Z and come up with a decision in the next 10 days? So that would be, it's very quick summary on what a project status update meeting looks like. Here's the template for that. This is pretty intuitive. If you guys open this up on your computer at home, you'll figure out pretty quickly how this works. And so these four things really help make, again, it's not the be all end all. This is not the exhaustive formula of all project management systems. But when we look at construction companies, we look at trades companies, we look at home service companies, that's the low hanging fruit. That's the stuff that I think people need to start with. And I'd even make a I'd make another comment. If you're nowhere on this, if you have nothing in place, I would start with the employment agreement, the GSR dashboard. Do that for 6 months, maybe even a year. Just focus on that, get that stuff really humming for you, get that stuff really working for you, and then go to the communication plan and the project status update. So those would be 4 things. I think that really moved the needle where this is concerned.
Love it. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I love all of the downloads and deliverables you guys have at BTA.
Mm-hmm.
So going over that, talking about how do I diagnose, what does it look like to be world class, how do I solve this problem? We talked about the actual aspect of project management. We talked slightly earlier on, finding the right person for that role. What do I need to be looking for in that ideal candidate's profile? I know you mentioned, growing them from within your organization. Maybe touch a little bit on, what does that profile look like when I get them in as some other entry-level role? How do I maybe identify them and say, I'm going to nurture them, I think they'd be a good project manager?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about that. Eric's got a great question here on SOPs too. Let's circle back to that after.
Yep.
So question is about who makes a good PM. I don't know, guys. Why don't I'm gonna go through this? Why don't you brain dump some stuff in the chat box while I'm kind of going through my thoughts on this? I'd love to compare notes. This is not. I'm gonna preface what follows by saying a lot of this stuff is there is no people are not robots, right? So it's not I wish they were sometimes, but it's not. These are sort of loose guidelines to follow, some things to think about, some traits to interview for. You're not always going to have someone that sort of has every single trait in the perfect quantity and perfect balance. You do usually need to make some sacrifices here or there. But if I were to describe a few things that I think are really important, and please dump in the chat box what you think is important, there's 4 things that come to mind. So the first is a trait we call instrumental. So instrumental is this is BTA terminology here, but we define instrumental as the ability to come across to others as highly competent and presentable. So are you articulate? Do you have a good vocabulary? Is your posture, is your body language one that is sort of open and confident and smooth? If you think of a really good salesperson, they usually have a really high instrumental. You have a really high instrumental, Gogan. When you get up and speak on stage, you're very confident, you use your hands well. It's that is what that's how we would define instrumentals. Can they communicate ideas effectively, and do they come across as someone that is confident in the world, right? Why is this important for a PM? So on the job site, the buck stops with them. They need to convey confidence to the customer, to their subtrades, to the in-house labor on site, to anyone else involved with the project. And a PM role is so communication heavy versus labor heavy. Other roles are labor heavy. Project management is fundamentally a communication heavy role. You need to be a very strong communicator. And so instrumental would be really high on the list. Number 2 would be something we call problem solving. Pretty obvious. If anyone here has worked with someone that scores low when it comes to problem solving, it can be pretty frustrating. Your phone rings a lot with what you feel are pretty stupid questions. Oh, hey Benji, the house is on a hill, and I can't get the ladder up, and can you come to site? And it's bro, can you try and figure this out first? Can you give me a few solutions maybe that you've thought of? So problem solving is the ability to find solutions to problems and look at challenges in a positive attitude. As a project manager, your entire job is solving problems. If projects went perfectly, if every time you built the project plan and the schedule, they just went off without a hitch every single time, we wouldn't need project managers, but they don't. And so that's why this role exists in the first place. And so if you score low on that, I think that's a pretty obvious one. I'll just actually make a really quick aside on problem solving, guys. This is a kind of good little coaching tip that I pulled from one of our senior construction coaches. His name is Paul. He gave me this bit. I think it's so good. I've used it a lot. If you want to train your staff to be good problem solvers, okay, here's what you do. When your people come to you with problems, whatever it is, big or small, okay, you ask them 3 questions every time. Write this down. What is the issue? Most of the time, when people are venting, they're upset, they're coming to you with problems, they don't even understand the root issue. Like they're just mouthing off about something. So what is the issue, first and foremost? Second question, in your professional opinion, what are 3 potential ways to solve the issue? There you go. Start thinking, start coming up with stuff. Question number 3, if I was stuck on a desert island right now and you could not talk to me, what path would you put forward to solve this? Okay, you ask people these 3 questions. Number 1, they're going to start thinking about root causes. Number 2, they're going to use I saw someone post in the chat box, creative problem solving, creative thinking. They're going to use that creative part of the brain to come up with potential solutions. And then usually they're going to be forced through this thought exercise to pick one. 90% of the time, what they're going to come up with isn't any better than what you could come up with yourself. It's going to be adequate. It's going to be good enough. Sometimes it might even be better than what you can come up with. And that little exercise over time, it's not going to happen overnight, but over the course of 6 months, a year, your people, you start to cultivate a problem-solving culture within your team.
Yeah. While you're on your side there, Benji, one thing I would add is just keeping in mind your point 1 was you have to be a great communicator. And how often am I going to run into, as a project manager, a solution where it's adequate, maybe adequate at best? And now I have to really leverage my communication skills to everybody that's on this job. And I've got to be confident in selling, like, hey, this is how we're going to accomplish this. Even if in the back of my mind, I'm saying, oh, shoot, this can be tough. Like, hey, I'm confident about this. I'm sure about this. I'm communicating it well. This is what we're going to do. I'm an authoritarian. I feel good about it. I'm confident. And so I think that's a really interesting order here, where you're like communication first, and then it's like, oh, we're into this problem solving piece second.
Yeah, that instrumental one where we talk about, like, are you confident and are you articulate? Like, do you come across as competent to people? There's a reason that that's so important for salespeople, and there's a reason it's so important for project managers. The overlap between the two is a salesperson is selling a job, is selling a project, is selling a product. A project manager is usually selling solutions to the client. I think this is going to work. I really think this is going to work. And then they're also selling it to, the people that have to go and execute. So there's a lot of persuasion involved in being a good PM. Just an interesting point. 2 other things, guys, just when I think about this, really high degree of tenacity. So tenacity is like someone's preference to overcome challenges through pure hard work. Like, are they gritty? Can they put their head down and get their ass in gear and finish something? Can they work a long day when they have to? Why? Well, because you need to be a bulldog to do this well, right? You need to have a get it done mindset. A laissez-faire approach to this just will not work if you care about making money. Furthermore, you have a whole bunch of people on site looking up to you. They're taking cues from you. And so if you're like, you know what, guys, it's Friday, let's call it a day. Like, that will accumulate over time. Last thing I would say would be core values. And that's true of any role. You need to have very, very strong core values alignment. If you've ever worked with a project manager who is not values aligned with you or your business, big problems. I just make a couple other points on this about who makes a good project manager. Okay. You have this saying, I don't know if we invented this or if someone else did, but we say it a lot in BTA. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. So unless you're launching rockets into space, you don't need someone with off the charts attention to detail. You don't need someone that is like crazy OCD or crazy anal about details. In construction, 99% of the time, getting, with some exceptions, but the vast majority of the time, getting it done is way more important than getting it perfect. So you have someone that fusses over things to an extreme degree, that can actually be a huge problem. You think it's going to be good, but for the sake of your business and its profitability and scale, it's actually not good. It can really slow things down. Other thing I'd really ask business owners to be really mindful of or really open to would be considering people that come from outside the industry. You do not need to be a construction guru with 30 years under your belt and know every technical detail and tool and product out there. You don't, your site super can do that. Some of your lead laborers, your carpenters on site can have that. You, the owner, can have that. The project manager's job is to what? Manage a budget, manage a schedule, communicate with the client. They need to have some information. They need to have some knowledge, but that stuff can be trained. And so we've had a lot of success finding PMs from dentist's office, from marketing companies, from hospitality, from tourism, like from totally first time in construction. They've come in, they've taken on a PM role, and they're absolutely crushing it. So you don't want to be totally cavalier about it. But don't think that you need to have someone with they need to have a black belt in construction. Not the case. So anyway, I'll pause there because I've been rambling on for a while. But those would be my thoughts on what makes a good PM. I'm curious to see the chat box and hear what other people think.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And kind of let's use the chat box and Q&A here as we kind of just bring this to a close. Ultimately, I think talking about what makes a good PM trait wise is a great place, but right now we can kind of answer questions as well as they're coming in. And obviously we alluded to it earlier, but those that are going to want to dive deeper on this topic, because we are limited to roughly an hour, you've got some deliverables there as well and downloads for them. So let's kind of do all of that stuff.
Sure.
Here as we put a bow on this, I do want to get to Eric's question. This is something I actually really enjoy, is when creating SOPs, do you create drafts, present that to the team, hone in and complete, or do you say, here's the SOP, this is what we're going to be doing?
Such a great question, Eric. I'm having someone come on the podcast to talk about this exact thing. So I'm going to answer this question in 3 parts. I'll be brief though. Number one, the first thing that you have to get right when implementing the SOP is the standard. Like that's the standard operating procedure. You have to get the standard right. Okay. Going back to my comment earlier, you, the owner, probably don't know as much about your business as you think you do. You want to write an SOP for how to do things on a job site. You are not the authority figure on this. The people on the job site are. So you definitely don't do the second part of your question. You don't create it top down and then say, this is what we're doing, right? Because what happens? They go, cool, I don't care. Like, whatever. Nice SOP, dude. I hope it looks like you had fun building that all weekend. I'm going to go back to my job now. So this is a leadership exercise. You crowdsource it. You involve them in the build out. You explain to them why this SOP makes their life easier, why it's going to improve the business. And then you lead them through the process of brain dumping, organizing their thoughts, getting it built into something that they were involved in creating. Then you have buy-in. There's a problem with people creating SOPs. Everyone's like, I made it and no one follows it. It's like, that's because no one cares. Like they didn't make it themselves. It's like, when you're a kid, like the best Lego sets were the ones that you created with your own mind, not the ones that came out of the box. It's the same thing with making SOPs. Like people want to feel like their creative juices are in that SOP. Then they'll follow it. Not only that, they'll actually sell it to the new people that come on behind them. They'll be like, I made this. I want you to follow this process. So get them involved. Don't write it yourself. Second thing you need to have is it needs to be very easy to access. That's why we like things like Company Cam or like tools where it's like it can be stored digitally. It can be accessed through your phone. A 64-page binder with rings that sits in the truck. No one's going to see it. It's going to collect dust all year. We know this. So it's easy to access. And the third thing is it's easy to update. Your business evolves. Processes improve. If these are like these static things that get written once and never updated, right? That's a problem because businesses change and they get better at things. They become more efficient. So you need to have, it needs to be very easy to amend things and improve them over time. So I hope that answered that question, Eric. To go deeper on that, tune into the podcast in about 6 weeks. We're gonna have a really great conversation on that.
I love that answer. And I also, the only thing I would add to that is I think about having children and picking where we're going to go eat. And if you set it up correctly in your SOP, there's probably things that you're like, hey, this really has to be in the SOP from my perspective as an owner. It's like when I'm picking that, it's like, hey guys, we're either going to go to Chick-fil-A tonight or Runza. I know we got some local Nebraskans in here. But I want to let you guys make that decision, and it's like, I'm empowering them to make a decision, but I've narrowed it down. I'm like, I'm not going to McDonald's. Like, that's not part of this procedure, but you're empowered to make the actual final decision. And so I think some of those things are important as well, as like, what do you as the owner feel has to be in the SOP, and make sure that you get that in there as well.
People always talk. Yeah. So, it's fine. I could totally go down the rabbit hole. I know we're running out of time.
I know. Yeah. We got tons of great questions here. Two of them kind of around the compensation and the financial end of things. But where can, obviously we could talk for hours on compensation and the financial end, but where can I go to, get some of these financial lesson plans or educational plans to grow as an owner, grow my team and their knowledge of some of the terminology. Also on that same thing for Brenna, where do I go to figure out, how do I pay these people? How do I compensate?
Come to Breakthrough Academy. Come work with us. If you don't want to work with us, check out our podcast called Contractor Revolution. This is literally all we talk about. It's free content. There's no ads. We BTA have created, I think, really like a tremendous amount of content that's widely distributed and totally available for you guys to educate yourself and then educate your team on this stuff. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. In fact, I'm looking at the time here. Usually you see a pretty big exit at the top of the hour. Guys, I just want to show you something really quick. I've mentioned these things, these employment agreements, project status updates, communication plans, GSR dashboard, all that stuff. Because we're like Canadian and way too nice, we give all of our stuff away for free. We're just like, here, have it. We don't care. I'm just joking. There's a lot more where this came from, but we would love to just sort of say, as a way to say, thanks for being here. We care about you. We want you to do well in your business. Go to trybta.com/PM. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it in the chat box.
I got you.
You got, okay. trybta.com/PM. That's going to take you to a landing page where you put in your information, your email, and you hit send me my templates, and we will send you a download pack. If you want to connect with me, you want to connect with someone from the team, you want to talk about project management in your business and where it's at, or other stuff. You want to talk about your hiring funnel, or you want to talk about your strategic plan, or you want to talk about your profitability numbers and why they aren't where you want them to be. We kind of joke, we call it like therapy for business owners. If you want to just like sit on a couch and talk about your feelings about your business, like that, we would love to do that. So book a strategy session with us, and on that same landing page there's going to be a button where you can say send me the templates and let's talk about how you can help my business. That will allow you to schedule a call with us, and we'll get to know you. These webinars are great, but they are ultimately kind of one-sided. I'd love to just like not talk and listen to you talk about your business. So if you want to do that, you can check that box that says send me the templates and let's talk about how you can help my business. And then lastly, for you guys, I saw a bunch of you guys asking this. If you want to educate your team, you want to educate yourself, you'd like to go, this is a 1-hour webinar, right? So we don't have time to do everything. If you want to go deeper on this, you check out Contractor Revolution. It's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, it's on YouTube, it's everywhere. And we have a lot of great project management episodes, episode 21, episode 28, episode 38, 5 to name 3. There's lots more. Go check out the show. There's a lot of good free information on that. So that's my shameless plug. Back to questions.
Yeah. So one great one that I think we can answer collectively. Paul asked about company cam offering or developing additional resources to assist with PMs. Great question, because Benji and I, before we went live, were talking about the new templated lists that we have in Company Cam in the marketplace. And honestly, I could see us getting some of, BTA's downloads and free things that they're giving out built into Company Cam, so that while you're in the field, you're not having to go through your Google Drive and find something that you can, kind of go through that. And so the fourth one there on the project status update, like, I think we could do a lot of that stuff for these contractors and really help your PMs with that. So absolutely something there. You can create them yourself, but we want to leverage our great relationships that we have, one being with BTA, to get you all those resources as well. Question here, I don't want to speak for you, but not in construction, but involved with construction and insurance inspection, more of a service company, do 20,000 jobs. Would that be a fit for BTA?
Totally. Not in construction. Yeah. We work with a lot of work with a lot of businesses that are in sort of the insurance realm, whether that's like your storm roofer, your insurance roofer. We work with a few public adjusters. Let's do a call, Darius.
Absolutely.
Let's talk outside of this. I have a feeling it'd probably work.
Yeah, I didn't want to speak for you, Benji, but I was like, essentially, B2C, you're helping those contractors, but a B2B that is doing the same stuff, I think there's a ton of value there. The only other thing I think that we have, other than make sure Darius could get a call.
Darius, I'm gonna post it again right below. You go to trybta.com/PM. Oh dang, this chat box doesn't create that into a link. So you actually need to copy that, paste it into your browser, go to that landing page, and then check the box that says send me my templates and let's talk about how you can help my business. And that will allow you to book a meeting with us.
Perfect. And then the only other thing that I think we have out there is a few people asking about the recording. That will be available, should be available tomorrow at some point. You should get all that via email. It also will be on companycam.com/webinars. So I'm guessing Benji or Danny's got other resources on our webinars page as well. So lots of good webinars and content on there. And then Kevin asked about certificates of attendance or credit hours. To my knowledge, we don't have anything there. But if there's an idea that you have, Kevin, we would, I think both of us be happy to dive deeper into that. This one we don't have. We can tell people that you came, but we don't have any credit hours available for this, but always something we're open to. So I think we've got everybody taken care of. Benji, as always, I appreciate it, man.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Like I said, we've had some Huskers in the audience today. Benji came and watched the basketball game. I keep telling him he's got to come watch a football game at the Mecca. So we'll keep pushing on him, get him down to Lincoln for a football game this fall. But to all you in attendance,
go Huskers,
go Huskers, go Big Red. We appreciate you guys joining us. And again, huge shout out to Benji and Breakthrough Academy. So thank you all, and we will see you next month for another round of webinar.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you guys.